Before we begin, since this is a BBC-owned property, I feel the need to point out that the news arm of the BBC has a continuing issue with transphobic leanings in its news coverage. You can find in a pinned comment below various videos from both myself and other YouTubers covering this issue. And while I understand that the Doctor Who creative team is not responsible for this, I will continue to point this out for as long as it remains a consistent issue. Thank you. You invite one, and they just insist on bringing all their friends, don't they? I'm not even entirely sure that intro made sense. Hey, why do I suddenly look differently? Well... That will be because the bulk of this video was actually shot before Russell T Davies confirmed that they are working on spinoffs. Right now, it's already being worked on. So while we didn't have any announcements as to what they are, when they will be coming out, or anything like that, the things that I'm talking about here, you're going to hear a lot of, just in terms of the timeline, like the tense that I use is speculative tense, future tense, like if this happens or when this happens. And obviously now it has happened. Why am I not reshooting the entire thing? Well, one, I'm lazy. I don't think I am, actually. I overwork. That's a different problem. But the other thing, and the actual relevant thing, is that my opinions that I voice in this are actually the exact same opinions I have. I'm not going to have the potential for a different opinion until we know exactly what we're getting for spinoffs. And since we don't know that yet, yeah, I'm just going to leave it with past me to express my feelings, mostly of trepidation about this concept. Just realize I will be talking as if we didn't already know. We now do, but my opinion and my thoughts, my fears, it's the same as when I said it back when I shot this. So let's get back to the me with the washed out hair color. Doctor Who spin-offs. The concept makes me nervous, and it's something that I feel like they really appear to want to be pushing for. And like there's no confirmation right now that Doctor Who is going to be getting spin-offs, but let's look at a number of factors here. One is Russell T Davies is taking over as showrunner again. He launched spinoffs previously, Torchwood and Sarah Jane Adventures. He wasn't the only one to do spinoffs. There was Class under Stephen Moffat, but nobody talks or remembers or thinks about that one very much since that happened. But that's one thing. And so since he was announced to be the new showrunner, I've seen more than a few people go, ooh, he'll bring back spinoffs. There has been word from behind the scenes that he would like to do that. There's the fact that Bad Wolf Studios, where the production is now being handled, that got bought by Sony, and Sony would probably very much like to have them working not only on Doctor Who, the main show, but also on multiple spinoffs so that they can have it generate more product, more funds, more work. And now there's also the fact that Disney Plus is going to be carrying Doctor Who in the not so distant future, and is also going to be putting some money towards the show itself. Exactly whether that's going to go in production or marketing or what, but they are going to put some financial muscle behind it. And just knowing Disney and its franchising nature, I would imagine that at the very least, the possibility of spinoffs is something that is part of the appeal of Doctor Who to them. Because, you know, why get the streaming broadcast rights for one show when it can turn into 2 or 3 or 4? So, and then there's like tiny things like this image that from some of the Doctor Who offices, like Whoniverse, really? Like, and I'm not mocking the name, like that's fine, but like we're really just immediately leaping into finding a term for a shared universe. Yeah, this doesn't excite me as a notion. there's a couple reasons for that. The first is I'm not a massive fan of any of the spinoffs. Well, the ones I've seen, at least. I have actually never gotten around to Class. I probably should one of these days. And I don't necessarily think that they're like bad or hurt the brand or shouldn't have existed. But like for me personally, as a viewer, Sarah Jane Adventures was fine, but it was skewed at a younger audience. I started watching modern era Doctor Who when I was in my mid-20s. I was too old to get lashed into the appeal of it. If my kid had ever gotten interested in Doctor Who and like at a young age and I'd hooked her into that, maybe like through her, I could have enjoyed it more. That certainly happened with a lot of stuff she liked when she was younger, but she never went for Doctor Who. So that didn't happen. And so just as an adult watching it, I'm like, I get why this is pretty good. And there's even a couple of episodes where I'm like, yeah, that is in fact pretty decent. But on the whole, I'm like, it's just aimed at a much younger age group than I am being able to connect with it through. And then there's Torchwood, which kind of had the opposite problem, at least initially, going so far out of its way to be mature and adult, and it was exhausting. And Torchwood would eventually yield some good things, whether it be certain individual episodes, especially in its second series, or whether it be an entire series, such as with Children of Earth, which is phenomenal. And I've talked about how good that is a while back, and my feelings are still in place. But that's one great series out of 4. And it's also the shortest out of the 4. So it's 5 great episodes out of 4 series. And like there are other good episodes, but like collectively. So yeah, Torchwood is a very mixed bag for me. And it's not something that gets me particularly excited. So the first reason why I'm not super pumped for the idea of spinoffs for Doctor Who is that I haven't really loved any of the ones we've gotten so far. Now that certainly doesn't preclude anything from being good, but historical precedent does count for something, at least in terms of expectation. It doesn't necessarily count for much in terms of what the actual end result will be, but like in terms of setting my expectation, that's what I have to go off of. And it doesn't super excite me. So there's that. There's the fact that I've said from the very beginning when RTD was confirmed to be coming back and fans first started speculating about, oh, he'll bring back spinoffs. My first immediate thought, and I still hold to this, is can we make sure that the main show, is in a good standing and in a healthy state before we start siphoning off resources into spinoffs? Like, I say this as someone who didn't especially enjoy the Chibnall Whittaker era. Like, I didn't. Some people did. That's great. I'm jealous. I wish I had, but I didn't. And my interest right now is knowing that I am enjoying the main show more. And while I have a certain amount of trust that will happen, I'd like to at least have that confirmed. And this is also where I feel like I should point out, I'm not going to say that they should never do spinoffs. But I really hope if they do, they don't jump into it right away. Because I'll tell you, if we get news of spinoffs before Ncuti Gatwa's first series starts, like if after the Tennant specials, they announce, and, Doctor Who will be back, and we have these spinoffs. That will really worry me. Because I want the main show to be the best it can be and feel that it is gotten into a good place before we start spinning stuff off. It's really hard for me to muster enthusiasm for spin-offs off of something that I don't know how it is yet. I know that I love Doctor Who as a show, but it does go through a big change every showrunner. And even though RTD has run the show before, it's been a while. He's not the same creator. He's changed. He's evolved. I don't know what he's going to deliver. I'm very hopeful for what he's going to deliver. But don't try and milk enthusiasm out of me for spin-offs of something that I don't even know what I think of it yet. Like, that just feels like asking too much from me as a fan. And I suppose it's also worth noting that when it comes to spin-offs, I'm going to say right now, don't try and recreate the ones you've already done. I mean, obviously, Sarah Jane Adventures, you can't continue on directly because, sadly, we lost Elizabeth Sladen. And Torchwood's probably not a great idea since the biggest star in that just keeps sticking his foot in his mouth over and over and over again and just needs to stop talking. Just stop, John, please. But, like, nobody seems to be eager to bring him back right now. So, you know, what would you base a Torchwood off? Just Gwen Cooper? I mean, I suppose you could, but wouldn't you be better off trying to build something new rather than trying to cobble together a resurrected version of something that clearly is not in a state where it's going to come back anything like it was before? So I will say that I suppose there's a little hope there because there has been rumblings in the fan community that since the character of Kate Stewart is coming back, that she is getting primed for a spinoff, presumably a unit-focused spinoff, which in some ways could fill the vacuum of Torchwood, where, you know, it's a team, it's earthbound, it's dealing with the incursions that happen when the Doctor isn't here. So at a basic core pitch, what the idea is, that could be similar to Torchwood, but would presumably have a very different tone to it because it wouldn't be this ragtag group of misfits necessarily, more likely a more organized sort of force, especially if Kate would be at the helm of that. So bringing her back, the announcement that she's coming back, it gives me some interest, but also some fear. Because if we presume that she is being primed for a spinoff, well, the fact that they've already announced her coming back makes it feel like they're setting up for spinoffs right off the bat, which brings me back to please don't run before you can walk. But at the same time, if she is being primed for a spinoff, she is a solid candidate for one. Whether she's working on her own or with Unit, she's definitely a character that could work. And she could carry her own show. So again, I'll reiterate, I'm not saying I never want Doctor Who spinoffs to happen again, but the spinoffs have never held my interest as much as the main show. So I just want to be sure that the show is working. And anything that's trying to get me excited for everything else, like imagine if Marvel had announced 2 years worth of sequels, spin-offs, and additional movies before the first Iron Man was even out. Yeah, no, I think a lot of people would have gone, can we wait and see if we like this first one? And that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, granted, again, RTD with Doctor Who has a more firm established thing. It's not a perfect analogy, but like, it's where I get concerned about the corporate entities involved. Because I mentioned Sony and I mentioned Disney, both of whom would have a financial incentive to want there to be more than just one show of Doctor Who. And if that is getting pushed for by them, especially knowing, again, to come back to Marvel, how much Disney is running some of its stuff into the ground right now with, frankly, an oversaturation of content. While I don't think that specifically will happen to Doctor Who because Disney is not getting any creative control so far as we know. But just knowing that that's Disney's mentality and also knowing that there's another huge studio behind the production company that would also want them to be producing more stuff, I just really worry that things are going to be... I'm worried that this era is going to get pushed out of the nest before it can fly. I'm mixing my metaphors. Don't run before you can walk. Don't jump out of the nest before you can fly. Like, pick pick a metaphor and stick with it. No, I won't. But it's just a point of nerves for me. And I guess sometimes I kind of see it as my job to temper the hype a little bit. Not that I want to rain on anybody's parade. If you're excited, that's great. But it worries me sometimes, I think, when I get into fan spaces or fan communities or fan chats and everyone just seems to be 100% on board for something like spinoffs. And I'm over here going, is no one else worried about this? And maybe nobody else is. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I am actually that old and grumpy and cranky. Maybe I actually am the Captain Buzzkill that my podcast creating friends have dubbed me to be. It's the way my brain works. I can't stop it from seeing the ways in which something might go wrong. And then I have to process it by talking it out. And this is my job now. So there you go. The reason that I don't, again, I'm not going to say I never want to see spinoffs, but I don't want to see them get rushed. I don't want to see them first thing. Do you think I'm being overly concerned? You probably do. But whatever your thoughts are, what your thoughts are on the spinoffs we've already had, what you would hope for spinoffs in the future, whether you share my fears, whether you don't, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about them. Patreon's what pays the bills, allows me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me there, like, a share, a subscribe. They also help me out. And there's links to various other things that I do down in the description. I've written books. I stream on Twitch. I've got an Instagram. I'm on Twitter, etc., etc., etc. But don't worry too much about it. What I really want you to remember is whether you are nervous about spinoffs or excited about them or completely indifferent, you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Well, it's Patreon supporter shout-out time, folks. So thank you to Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfulla, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Oliver B., Angus Bjarnason, Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Theo the Boyd, Toy Lowly, Becky Spark, Fernabilax the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, General Contact Unit Problem Child, Angry Casperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. Thanks so much for your help. You can get your name read out too. Check out the rewards in the Patreon. Is that what they should do? Should they check the Patreon?